Georgian London was changing shape and changing style. It was a beast with two heads, split between the rich and poor, the old city to the east and the new West End. The rich and the fashionable fled the narrow streets and crowds of the city. The West End was born in a frenzy of speculative building. It produced neat, uniform townhouses and a new pattern for civilized living, the London Square. The principle behind the squares was to create an oasis of calm away from the turbulent crowd. They were designed as centres of small communities, each with their own church and market. Their regularity and uniformity have the air of old monastery cloisters or convent gardens. They have become London's great gift to the development of cityscape. But they didn't remain models of civic harmony for long. The London crowd, with all its mess and degradation, flowed into every new space. No one could live apart from it. People soon complained that St. James's Square had become a receptacle for all the dead cats and dead dogs of Westminster. London is unimprovable and unstoppable. By 1750, the capital was home to 10% of the population of England. Foreign visitors were intrigued by the novelty and theatricality of London street life. There was nothing like the glitter and amenity of the West End to be found anywhere else in the world.
In Oxford Road alone, there are more lamps than in all the city of Paris. Shops seem to be made of glass.
And through the streets, there surges a bustling, thrusting crowd such as our busiest boulevard gives no idea of.
I have just reached London. It is terrifying. It is mad. London is the grandest and most complicated monster on the face of the earth.
But the city was also an inspiration. Few could resist the theatre of its streets. James Boswell described his rising excitement on being driven along the Haymarket for the first time.
I was full of rich imagination of London, such as I could not express to most people, but which I strongly feel and am ravished with. My blood glows and my mind is agitated with felicity.
The city was endlessly stimulating, but it wasn't rank or nobility that drove London. It was money.
Covent Garden.
Giacomo Casanova was a churchman, soldier, diplomat and spy, as well as a notorious libertine. When he first visited London in 1763, he immediately grasped the city's founding principle.
In London, everything is easy to him who has money, and is not afraid of spending it.
The second thing that struck him was the disrespectful nature of the London crowd.
A man in court dress cannot walk the streets of London without being pelted with mud by the mob. They hoot the king and the royal family when they appear in public, and the consequence is they are never seen.
Georgian London aspired to elegance, but it was in reality chaotic. The natural arena for this typically London mingling of high and low, where the crowds of the East met the crowds of the West, was Covent Garden. But it hadn't always been that way. The Palladian-style church of St. Paul's is a clear sign of its aspirations. Its piazza had been the very first square in London, intended for a highly select group of aristocratic town dwellers. But as the better sort continued to move westward, the neighbourhood declined. Punks, madams, jilts, doxes, smuts, cracks, trulls, trogmouldies, bunters, does, punchable nuns, moles, mackerels and cats. The whores of London had 100 different nicknames, but whatever you called them, they were all available in Covent Garden. The old London of Smithfield and Bartholomew Fair, with its crowds and its vices, had reasserted itself.
I must tell you about the lewd hussies who are everywhere. Every 10 yards one is attacked, even by children of 12 years old. They attach themselves to you like limpets. Often they seize hold of you in a fashion of which I can give you the best notion by the fact that I say nothing about it.
As Covent Garden came alive at night, it turned into a sexual marketplace. The nearest equivalent today is Soho, a few streets to the west. In a city of trading and selling, the poor had nothing to sell but their bodies. They serviced a precisely calibrated machine of supply and demand. There were public houses where posture dancers performed an 18th century version of striptease. There were houses of pleasure which specialized in flagellation. And there were molly houses which were frequented by homosexuals. Anything and everything was available. For Boswell, the teeming city was an aphrodisiac.
At the bottom of Haymarket, I picked up a strong, jolly young damsel, and taking her under the arm, I conducted her to Westminster Bridge. And then, in armour complete, did I engage her upon this noble edifice. The whim of doing it there with the Thames rolling below us aroused me much.
Endlessly theatrical itself, Covent Garden has always been London's theatre district. And the theatre was where the disorderly London crowd was at its very worst. In the name of public order and decency, the Licensing Act of 1737 attempted to control the number of theatres and the plays that were performed. But it couldn't do anything about the behaviour of the London audience. Despite the efforts of actor-manager David Garrick to woo a more respectable public, the Drury Lane Theatre was wrecked by riots 6 times in just over 30 years. Nothing seems to have channeled the latent violence of the London crowd more than the theatre. Rival gangs packed the theatres in order to support or shout down the latest productions. Fights would break out, which frequently developed into riots. It became so dangerous that a row of sharp iron spikes was set along the front of the stage in order to protect the actors from the London mob.
At the theatre there was already a vast crowd of people, all struggling like wild beasts, as usual in England. The theatre was literally stormed. They clambered onto the benches behind the backs of the people on the seats. Prostitutes forced their way through every loophole. The chatter never stopped, and there was some fighting.
The fury of the crowd could be sparked by the smallest provocation. Casanova was at Drury Lane one evening when Garrick's decision to change the programme led to the theatre being gutted by the mob. He also witnessed Garrick's humiliation when the theatre reopened.
When Garrick appeared, 1,000 voices took up the cry, "On your knees! On your knees!" He had to kneel down and beg forgiveness. Then came a thunder of applause and everything was over. Such are the Londoners.
The end of the play was the start of the real drama, when the crowd was back upon the streets. The threat of pickpockets or worse was ever present. It was said that at night in Covent Garden you couldn't walk the few hundred yards between the Rose Tavern and Button's Coffee House without risking your life. Twice.